Here with Adrian Dinkel, head coach Southeastern, 15th season coaching, heading into 16th season, but stops at Clarendon, Bethany, and Sterling. NAI national champs in 18 and now in 22. So, Adrian, congrats, man, and thanks for jumping on with me.
Appreciate you, Ryan. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's pretty recent here, but have you had a chance to reflect? I know you got to get into recruiting and all the other stuff, but have you had a chance to just kind of sit down and mill over the season?
A little bit. I think that since we it was such a long month for us. I mean, I think people don't understand a little bit. I think a lot to do with coaching this world. I mean, we started off on the road at the beginning of May, 5 days, home for a day. Then I'm on the selection committee for the NEI. So then I was in Kansas City, and then I was back, and we were then in Indiana. Then we were in Idaho. So by the time I got home, the only thing I worried about was seeing my two kids and my wife. And so reflect, obviously, then you were going, wow, it's awesome, we did it again. But I would say for me it was just a little bit more sense of relief, and you're kind of just relieved that you want it, but then you're relieved that you finally got to go home and see the kids and the wife.
I mean, is that part of building a program? Are those the expectations that you're going to have a chance to win the national championship every year?
And it is, and it's self-induced pressure, right? Nobody else is putting the pressure on you, but it's wanted pressure, it's welcome pressure. I think that there's there's probably more out there in the country than we think, but you've kind of set it up to where it's almost like you feel like, and you shouldn't feel this way. You feel like if you don't win the last game of the year, that it's almost a failure. Where we get to the World Series, 4 or 5 years in a row, and you're like, hey, if we don't win it, then we fail. That's not the case. The only one that really thinks that is you. And that's kind of the pressure that you kind of put on yourselves when you feel like you've built that type of program. And there's other people who be listening to this podcast, or people I talk to the time like, man, I just love to go to the World Series. Yep. Right. So it seems a little bit like, hey, I need to check myself and catch my balances a little bit and understand that, hey, dude, like, no matter what happened in that situation, we had a great year.
Yeah. Did getting there last year help this year's team?
Different team, but I think that anytime you've been there before, any player that you could bring along with you definitely helps. I do. I think that it helps just because they understand the lay of the land, what it's like to go put three guys in a room in a hotel. Just the time change, the whole thing. There's more people besides myself and my coaching staff are telling these guys like, hey, listen, like, this is what you're going to deal with. This is what it's all about. And so it became a real smooth process.
Give your assistants some love. They don't always get a lot of love, but give your assistants some love.
I obviously got the four, but you got Mike Mendoza and Eric Dahl. Those guys crushed it. I mean, Eric's been with me for my entire career, so people don't realize that Eric's been with me. And then obviously Mike's been with me for the last 3 years, and he crushes it as well. And then we had Connor Daly came down, really helped out with our pitching staff this year from CV, Top Valley Junior College up there in North Carolina. And then Austin James, the kid that played for us, was originally at Missouri. And those guys were a big help. I mean, especially with as much as I am on a lot of these national committees, there's a lot more on those guys' plate to handle stuff at practice. And I think I say it all the time in every interview I'm in. People talk to me way too much. Those guys they did a ton for us. And we obviously don't win that championship if it wasn't for those four.
How has it been on the committees?
I love it, believe it or not.
And I did too. I loved it also.
I loved it. So I obviously on the coaching side, I really like the admin side. I enjoy the admin side of things. It's something, obviously, I think as I continue to move in my career, still young, I'm only 40, but as I continue to get down there, I would love to, kind of push into that type of role, that the admin type of role. So it's fun. I mean, it's enjoyment. You get to see what, early when you were young and dumb as a coach, you only see in your side. And when you get on there, you're like, yeah, boys, like, you get mad. I have to come back to the office and they're screaming and yelling about what happened. I'm like, yeah, I got to see this side. And so I like it because I get to see what my AD sees and what the NAI sees, and so it's fun. I enjoy it.
I mean, you had some guys had some monster seasons. Just, I mean, when you're looking at the stats, you hit 360 as a team. You had 140 doubles, 123 home runs, and also 107 stolen bases. But the team ERA was a 3.25. So, I mean, probably too many guys to mention, right? Like when you look up and down your stat line, it's like, okay, gaudy numbers. And I know Fuentes kind of carried the load for you there down the stretch. He did get a call, by the way, his junior year of high school, coming out of high school because he's from Crystal Lake, so Western Illinois. I did get a chance to call him. It was interesting with the language barrier, just trying to communicate with him, but you knew he was going to be really good back then.
That kid is one of the best teammates, human beings, good players that I've ever coached. And that's kind of why it's fun. But the ultimate group. That's why we liked our team. Obviously, it's really easy to like your team when you only lose 4 times in a year, right? But ultimately, at the end of the day, these guys were unbelievable human beings. This is one of the best teams I've ever been around. Didn't have to remind them a lot. Got on them a few times early, but they just kind of handled their business. You had older guys like Abdel Guadalupe, which honestly was a program changer for us this year. He's the guy who was with us in 19 in our World Series, and we had him in our COVID year. And he actually had to go home and take care of some stuff with family over COVID with some stuff. And we brought him back because, like I said, he's like my son. And he came back with the whole different grown-up mentality. And he really honestly changed the way a lot of our guys think. But you had Gary Laura, Sam Faith, you had a ton of those guys, and on the pitching side, they did it. But yeah, I mean, obviously, you got good players, but you also have a good system in place with the coaching staff that did a pretty good job of implementing and developing those guys. And I think that's one thing where we pride ourselves on, Ryan, is we go find really good players, but we also want to develop those players when they get in our program, and we pride ourselves on seeing how much more we can develop them when they're here.
I mean, what stuck out when he got back from break? I mean, what stuck out about, okay, his maturity level's raised?
He's an adult. He was a flat out an adult. I mean, you've got kids, and you know how it is, man. When you roster, he's got kids come in and they get mad about their at bat and their helmet, and we get on the guy. You slam your helmet, we're gonna sit you. You drop language, we're gonna sit you. We're just gonna move to the next guy. He was the guy that every waking moment around the corner out the field is like, why are you getting so mad? Like, and he just had a constant professionalism about him, and and you'll hear our guys at the end of the year and even our exit interviews, they're like, the guy that changed the most for me besides your coaching staff was Abdel Guadalupe. He was just always on those guys about like, why are you getting so mad that you struck out? Like, you're going to have another at bat. And they're like, well, this is why. He's like, this doesn't make any sense, right? And we explain it to him all the time. And it's just when he says it to him, they're like, oh man, we got a player saying this. And he fully got it. They would see it. He'd go up there and have a bad at bat. He would just walk in the dugout, set his stuff down, and jump right on his teammates and go do it again. And you're like, and it just kind of bled over to a bunch of our guys, like Isaac Nunez, transferred from Florida, played there as a freshman. And he said that was the biggest thing that helped him. He's like, once you guys stuck me in a room with him on the road, he's like, my game completely changed, because he would just be in my ear all the time about, hey man, what are you getting so mad for?
Is this an average roster size for you? Is this normal roster size? Is it large? Is it small comparatively?
It was large.
Larger?
It was large. Yeah. And I told you before the call, we're looking at roster, trying to figure out a way to make it a little smaller. It's tough to manage. But when you're in a situation where, golly, there's so many kids back in so many situations, it kind of ultimately you got to find the right guys. But there's a lot of pressure on, these players, coaches, whatever you got to do. But yeah, it was a much bigger roster size than we wanted. And it wasn't big compared to a lot, but it was still big compared to what I like.
Yeah. It looks like 4-year transfers and also JUCO transfers. I mean, it looks like that's the makeup of it.
Yeah.
I mean, how nice is that to have 4-year transfers coming in and guys that had good careers at other 4-year schools coming in? It's nice to be able to rely on those guys.
Right. That's the helpful part, right? If you're going to go get a kid that, played at New Mexico and started for them on a Saturday, right? There's a lot of experience that comes in, and they get to see, and you get kids that played at Indiana State with Fuentes, and they have good careers. It is very helpful. Obviously, get those JUCO kids that were signed Division I, that things one way or another didn't work out, or they're on your campus, but that is helpful. Obviously, you also have the guys that were beat dogs at some of these Division I programs that are really good players. Things just didn't go their way, and I know that dog-eat-dog world up there. Yeah. That when they get here, they get a little bit, you got to push a little bit more confidence into them. And those are the guys that are game changers. Alex Monroe was our best bullpen arm. He was at Miami, left-handed specialist for them. He comes out, those guys call me over there from Miami, say, man, this kid's a good arm. Love him. He gets confident he's going to be great. And that's what he does. He comes into a place and he was unconfident early, a lot of false confidence, gets confidence, and blows up. And a lot of it has to do with those guys that were really good at that level. Continue to tell them, hey, you are really good.
Yeah. Was it closer by committee? It looked like it was kind of spread out with save situations. I mean, is that by design, or is it
Always.
Just best available?
Always. I've had a closer 1 year in my career. We're going to go, if there's a guy that takes that job, we're going to take it. If not, we're going to pitch, because I don't believe in a closer in the 8th or the 9th. If I got to win a game in the 5th, we're putting the guy on the mound. That's just it. We got to win the game in front of us, the inning in front of us. I can't wait. We don't get you. So it's always going to be that way. If you look at our stats in the past, it's, hey, man, if I got to put you out there in the 6th to go get 2 outs, and that's all you got, I'm going to go get you to go get 2 outs, and then we're going to figure it out from there.
Have you always done it that way? I mean, did you come in like for the last 15 years? Has it been okay when we need to stop the other team, we're going to throw a guy in there, or did that develop over time?
Developed over time. Obviously, young and dumb, right? You were like, hey, man, like this is what they do on TV,
Yeah.
right? They got a 7th, 8th, 9th inning. And then you start to realize real quick, we ain't very fortunate enough to most of us that we don't have a 7th, 8th, 9th guy. We're going to just take the best guy and get him in. Out. Through the time you start figuring out, man, I got to win the game. So what do we got to do to win the game? We do it. And so it just kind of developed. You're like, hey, man, win the game. And we'll figure it out. And traditionally, we've been very fortunate to have good offenses. So the more zeros that we can put on the board, obviously we feel like we create some separation in those games. Hopefully we can create some separation in those games. And if we do that, then it changes.
Did you face much adversity? You said it. You lost 4 games. I mean, you did lose to Faulkner twice there in the middle of the year, but you ran off 26 in a row to start the season. Like, was there any
Kaiser twice.
Kaiser? Sorry.
Did we face any adversity? Yeah, I think adversity for every game. And I'll say this: I've had some good teams. This the team that we had in 2020 was maybe one of the best teams we've ever had, and that team was like 26, 27-1 before COVID shut it down. But like this team was, I knew in a lot of those years, hey man, like we show up, this is what's going to happen. This year, believe it or not, every game I never knew with this team. I never knew if it was like what's going to happen, and then it's crazy to think, man, what are you talking about? They lost 4 games, but you just never knew. The only thing you knew about this team was they didn't care. It was always so what. It really was a so what mentality for these guys, and they kind of ingrained it. And that was something we said early. The players bought it. So what? But yeah, I think there was a lot of adversity almost every weekend. There was something with this team every weekend. If you go look at our scores, and we were down multiple times, 6-0, 7-0 throughout the year, and then you just pull the thing up and it looks like we 14-7. No, we were losing that game 7-0, and we won 14-7. So it was like, what are we doing? And then you'd always hear somebody in the dugout go, all right, boys, time to wake up. And then a bunch of runs go on the board.
I mean, is that something you can develop, or is that just something that the players innately have?
I think that's culture driven.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, and I know that people say, hey, they got a great culture, right? But I also believe culture changes year to year.
Yeah.
But you also have the umbrella of your culture. And I do think that is guys have done a great job over these last 6 years of kind of building that into our program. They passed it along from player to player, right? And we could talk all we want and say that's coach driven. No, that's player driven. Bottom line is we set a foundation, players do, and the players have kind of driven that over our last 6 years. And there's other programs on the country that are the same way. But yeah, I think that's just culture driven. They understand that, hey, we should win this game. Let's go.
Yeah. Did you have to say much to them after you guys lost to Lewis and Clark in the World Series?
Not a word.
Yeah.
Literally.
I figure, I mean, you're rolling at that point. It's just, okay, let's go tee it up tomorrow.
Let's go. That's it. Tell us, hey, you know where we're at. This is what we got to do. We were without our catcher and our first baseman in that national championship game. So it was, let's go. You got 9 innings to go get it right. And honestly, we felt kind of good moving into that. We were just like, hey, man, let's go. Kind of won, national pitcher of the year. And Robbie obviously loses that game before, but we have a bulldog in Drew Gillespie. We were like, hey, you're going to go get us. We honestly expected 3, goes and gives us, 4, almost 5. But yeah, you didn't need to say much. I mean, at that point, what am I going to say? It's honestly best at that point to shut up.
Yeah. Yeah. Was this team different than 2018?
Yes.
What were the differences?
Well, you had possible big leaguer in Johnny Bermudez on Friday night in 18, right? So obviously the 2 national pitchers of the year, both years, obviously, I guess, have a national pitcher of the year and you can win a national title. But they different. So 18 was really good defensively. So we played to that strength a little bit. We can run. We're a little bit more athletic. This year we were terrible defensively, but we could slug it and spin it, and we kind of mixed and matched. So it was, they were 2 different teams. Where like 18, we just knew that the ball was on the ground, you were out. If you put it in, like, you were out. Like, and we pitched really well, and offensively we scrapped and we competed, and we had enough firepower in the middle of the lineup we could make it happen. Where this team, it was just a lot of firepower, a lot of puzzle pieces on the mound, and pray on defense.
Yeah. Drive in more than you let in. That's how I was as a player. I appreciate the guys that are really good offensive players and just kind of scrape by as best you can defensively, because that's kind of what I was.
I didn't love him, but it was who we were, man. That's it. Didn't love it, man. We just, the guys, we wore it. It was the best is this group, right? They bought into it too. We just had a conversation in the middle of the year, like, guys, I don't know what to do with you defensively. We got our infield guy panicking. We got a million ground balls. At one point, I was like, let's just accept the fact that we're not very good defensively,
Yes. Yep.
and let's just eliminate mistakes and let's score a ton of runs. And that's
Yep.
just, we kind of realized, not much we can do. Half the time when the ball got hit, you were like, oh, please catch it. And then it worked out.
What has NAI meant to you? I mean, you've made a great career at the NAI level. What has it meant to you?
It means family.
Yeah.
That's just it. I mean, it means family. Obviously, been at a lot of levels. Obviously, you're going, hey, am I stuck? Am I not stuck? I don't think that's the word in the NAI. It's a lot of opportunities to be home.
Yeah.
A lot of opportunities to, and I've always been that way. So listen, man, I played junior college ball, I've coached, and I've been all over. But like, for me, it was a big thing of like, what can I do to win games, and not have a ton of unwanted pressure, and I could dictate my own happiness, and I could be home with my family. Obviously, there's always the competitive side saying, hey, can I do it elsewhere? We all say that, right? But at the end of the day, when you sit down and relax, you're like, do I really have it that bad, right? I get to go coach and help develop young men, and have a chance to compete, and to win national titles and coach in an unbelievable area, right? Like, it's like I got two kids now, and being here with the NEI it really means more family for me than anything. When I think about it, I think, hey man, like I get to do what I love, but I also get to be, with my family as much as I choose to be with them.
Yeah. When did you get to that point where it's like, okay, I dictate my own happiness? I think that's the key to a fulfilled life, is that when you finally get to that point, is like, hey, I'm dictating what external influences dictate. They don't dictate my happiness. I'm dictating my own happiness.
So believe it or not, I think we all put unwanted pressure or pressure on ourselves to win, right? Because for some reason in this game, we all validate ourselves off championships, which we shouldn't. And I did, when I was young. I validated myself on how much. When we won a lot of games, we went to World Series and Sterling, and I really believed that I was only, going to be judged, or my happiness be judged if we won championships, which was the dumbest thing I've ever had in my life. So then we won the championship and a national title in 18, and immediately after I was like, well, that was it.
Yeah.
Like that was like, what? Like I did all of that for that? Like what did I justify? So it was at that moment I just realized, like, like I'm going to dictate my happiness. I'm not going to let them dictate my happiness. I'm not going to let this whole surrounding dictate my happiness. Now we all get caught up in a situation where like the happiness still gets pounded in coaching and things like that, because at the end of the day, if they don't play well, your happiness will be affected a little bit, but nowhere near as much as it used to be for me. Now it's just like, if we lose, I move on wildly fast. I'm like, hey, let's move. Where before I hung on to it. But I think it was, in 2018, after winning a national title, which I would challenge anybody listening to this, you don't have to win a championship to realize that you don't have to win one to dictate your happiness. I mean, once I realized that, man, I started having much more fun with my family, people around me. I don't care as much. My so what meter went way up here, and I'm like, hey man, let's go develop and have fun. Let's love on these guys a little bit more, and honestly open up the doors for me to love my players a heck of a lot more. Before, I was that guy that was like, I was on you, I rode you, I wanted to make sure you understand what you were doing. I was every waking moment, and I would tell you I love you in passing. Right now it's like, nah man, I tell you I love you all the time, care about your well-being, but hey, along the way, let's help each other.
What'd you take with you from Bethany? You were at Bethany for a while, so I mean, what'd you take with you from Bethany?
So finished there, played my last year there, and then coached with Matt at Trammell, and obviously he left, and I went to Clarendon with Mike Silva, which is now the head coach at Nickel State. So me and Mike were at Bethany together, then me and Mike were at Clarendon together now. So I honestly took from there, because the guy gave me an opportunity. I took from there, one, he taught me how to recruit. Matt Trammell did. That's one of the best guys I've ever been around recruiting wise. But I took from there just the grind and figuring out how to literally not be afraid to get told no, because you were in the middle of nowhere with nothing. And I'm waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning and stealing the keys from the maintenance department because they didn't want to mow the grass. And I'm stealing the mower and mowing the grass, and then calling kids and substitute teaching. So I learned from that, like, if this is what I want to do, I got to grind, and can't, like, I'm just going to have to call. And a lot of that came from Matt, where Matt, and, even Silva being about the same age, we were kind of learning that together, was just like, hey man, like, let's just grind, figure it out, and things aren't always going to be great if this is what you want to do. And it was honestly one of the more valuable lessons I've ever had. I wouldn't change working there, because there was nothing there, and it made me want to work harder to get to a place where I didn't have to do as much.
Yeah. Similar to Clarendon?
Yeah, Yeah, similar, not much going on. A little bit better at Clarendon than Bethany. Obviously, Mike gets the job, go with Mike. And so you've got a guy that can really, really coach on both, and you feel like you're pretty good at it too. But yeah, similar. You ain't getting kids from Texas and Clarendon. Um, so, you're in the car sleeping in your car for a month trying to find all the players. But yeah, very, very similar. That was the benefit of Clarendon is you learn the West Coast to the East Coast. From about as north as you can get, you found every player you could possibly find because you just flat out weren't getting the good ones. If you wanted a dude player from Dallas, he ain't coming to your place. So you had to find them everywhere else from Australia, Canada. And that was very, very similar. Just middle of nowhere, got to work and go figure it out.
And ton of success at Sterling, ton of success at Southeastern. I mean, when did you feel like, okay, this is the blueprint for us to go compete for a national championship?
I feel like that was kind of passed on to the people that I worked for. I feel like they kind of guided me into that. Then you just, obviously, then you took what you've learned and your work ethic and you figured out, hey, this is what I got to do. And that was it. But a lot of that has to go with the people that you've worked for, and you take the goods and the bads, and here's the blueprint. And you've got enough people that have been enough winners that you're going, hey, man, they kind of showed you it. Now just go work. Go work, and you find your niche. And I think that was one thing I think that I had to do at Sterling, because that's also was in the middle of nowhere, was we didn't chase certain players there. We didn't chase what everybody else did. I went and found players that were different than everybody else and developed different than everybody else. And that was kind of my niche. And I told him, if I ever got a job where I can get the dude players, I'm still going to do that way. And that's kind of where I felt my blueprint was, where I feel like some people at the time were doing it different. No, I want to be different. And I've said this before. My goal in coaching was always to be different than everybody else. I'm not trying to be everybody else. I don't want to be everybody else. I want to be us. And if it's different, then it's different. It's just who we are.
How early in the fall do you talk about winning a national championship, or do you talk about it all in the fall?
We don't.
Yeah.
We don't. That's it. We don't bring it up. The guys will understand through the recruiting process, hey, like, you're coming here to win and compete at a high level. And obviously the expectation is to win national championships, but we're not. There's never been a conversation where we sit there and just hammer on them about winning a national title. There's never been a conversation going, this team's outworking you. We don't. No, we show up, here's our times, here's our weights, here's our indies, here's our stuff, and we're going to get better, and then we're going to go do us. We felt like we recruited good enough players, just like other people have, and you better go compete. I think that's the worst thing to do, personally, if I'm just saying national title. I'm not talking about anybody else. I don't worry about anybody else. We just go compete.
Do you feel like the hitters have caught up to the pitchers finally in college baseball?
Yes.
It's crazy, isn't it? You look across every level of college baseball now, there's some gaudy offensive numbers being put up.
So we talked about this before this morning when we were in our little meeting with my coaching staff. So and we kind of did it this year, and wild enough, I think it might have been the best pitching staff. Wouldn't say
3.25 ERA is nothing to shake a stick at. That's great.
Punched out the world, right? And obviously you see like Tennessee Wesleyan with the great pitching staff, those guys. But what we did is, so I had team last year, we had 5 guys that were 95 plus. We had a kid touching 101. So you were kind of mapped out in there trying to match all this explosion with explosion. And I just, after last year, in the middle of the year, I was like, we can't. Let's do it different. And so we actually went out and tried to find every single left-hander or right-hander that was 88 to 91 that could just pitch. And that's what we did. And it ended up being, like, if you walk people, we just weren't that interested. And it actually kind of helped us minimize that, with the hitters being, I wouldn't say catching up. I would almost say like passing the pitching. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we would have 95 and they would just sit on fastballs and hit it out of the yard. So we changed it and rolled from there. But yeah, it actually made our life a little easier having more guys that threw strikes. Where before, had guys going 96. We got Heisman with Padres. He'd go games where he was 98 to 100.
Well, especially if you're going to make errors defensively, like you can't do both. Like you can't make errors and then also walk out. Like you can't. Like you have to minimize free bases somehow. So if you are going to make errors defensively, that's fine. You just got to limit on the pitching side. Or if you can really pick it, then you can get away with some pitchers that walk some guys. It's just you just can't do both.
Well, yeah, walks. I mean, if you're walking 6, is giving up 6 hits.
Yes.
Right, and if you can't hold the runners, it's 6 doubles. And so you're going, hey man, like let's just take our chances of we're going to force the other team to be better, and I think that's it. But I mean, heck, even now, I mean, the offense players are just so good, and it's, even in our level in our league, they're really good, right? It's the best league in the country at our level, so you really can't afford to give up free passes because the minute you give a free pass and the next ball leaves the yard, especially in our yard, we don't play in a we hit very hitter friendly ballpark. So we have to make sure that we eliminate as many free passes as possible, which we didn't do that very well in defense this year, but we struck out enough guys to offset it.
How do you handle that with your pitchers though, with the offensive park? Do you have many conversations like, hey, you're going to give up a home run here and there
They
pitching,
get
like
it.
it's just part of it?
They get it. We recruit the way we recruit to our park. And that's different than I know people say that they recruit offense to their park. We don't recruit offense to our park. We recruit offense to bigger parks, but we recruit pitching to our park. And that's it. Like we're like, hey man, like when you look the numbers or you watch, you're like, hey, how's that going to work? Because it's confident you're going to get destroyed. But our guys just kind of understand that, hey man, that you might, that ball ain't leaving this time of the year, but at our park it will at this time, right? But then obviously you're in Florida, so if the wind blows in at all, it ain't going anywhere. So you do have the other side of it. But yeah, it's just we find guys that fit our system, that we can train to strike guys out, because the more guys you strike out, the less it has a chance to go over our fence.
Yep. Do you have a fail forward moment? Do you have something you thought was going to sidetrack you, but looking back now was one of the best things that happened to you?
In my career,
Yeah, or life. I mean, it could be a life thing, could be a career thing. Do you have a fail forward moment?
oh, I think I have one every year.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, I think there's something that's in there every year, right? Whether that's something at home, getting ejected in a game, and you're in the principal's office, having that conversation, or just family stuff, or different opportunities. I think that there's something every single year, and I wouldn't put it on one, because I think there's so many things that we all have that you're like, man, like was that good or was that bad? And then you realize it was good for you moving forward, right? Did I miss here? Uh, did I handle that situation wrong? And I think that there's honestly one thing a year that, if you want to be honest with you, it's just I can't put my thumb on one.
Do you have set morning or evening routines? I know you're busy with your job and then family. Do you have any personal routines, habits that you like that you feel like help?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a routine driven human being. So obviously it's every morning. Got a dog and I love that dude. So when that dude gets up, snuggles me, then I got the kids and I get them dressed. But it's the same routine with the kids at kind of almost every single morning. So I might be over the top family guy. Honestly, I mean it is. I mean, that is priority number one for me. I don't, this whole thing that we're doing here, I love, and I love them, but like they are, without a doubt, my kids are that's it. It's the end all be all for me. So it's a routine with how I get them ready in the morning. It is. And if I don't do it, I feel kind of out of whack, right? When we were on the road, I would still have to get up early 3 hours just to call the kids. But yeah, it's that for me, it's the routine inside of my family.
Yeah. I mean, what do you hope for your kids, your own kids personally? What do you hope for them as a parent?
That they're just loved.
Yeah.
That's it, man. I grew up without a dad until my stepdad came along. I just want my kids to be loved. I don't look successful lives. I don't care what they do, how they do it, as long as they know they're loved. And and that's really all I genuinely care about, man. I want them to be happy and know that they have plenty of opportunities to be successful. But at the end of the day, how successful will be as long as they know they're loved and they have people, family that's there that cares for them. That's for me. That's all I ever hope for my kids. I don't have a thing. My kid plays ball. My daughter plays softball and dances. They do that. I don't ever once go, hey, no, man. Are you having fun? And do you know you're loved? That's it, man.
I want them to be good human beings out in society. Honestly, that's my biggest hope for my two kids, is
Every
that
day.
they're good
Tell my
human
kid
beings.
every day. Same thing. I said, dude, all that matters is be a good dude.
Yeah.
Tell him all the time. I drop him off this morning at he does a little workouts in the morning. He's just 10, but we're in Florida. So I think you got to work out when you're 10 years old and hit weights. And so it's what they do. And I'm dropping them off. And it's the same thing we tell them all the time. I tell them every day when I drop them off at school, I just said, hey, they go win the day and be a good human being every single day. Be a good dude today, man. That's it. And it's the same conversation. I always tell them, what are you going to do? Be a good dude, man. That's all you just tell dad. I'm going to be a good one today. It's just be a good teammate. Be a good, we don't talk about it after the game. How are your teammates? And I'll give the kid a little credit. I think it's working because he doesn't ever bring up himself until he talks about everybody in his team first. And that's really all I care about is like, hey man, do people like you? And are you fun to be around? And if you're not, then I'm gonna let him know. But that's I'm sure you do the same thing. I just want him to be fun to be around.
Yep. What's the best advice you ever got from somebody?
Oh, golly. I've had a lot of good advice. Honestly, I'd say this probably from my mom was shut up.
My dad too.
Yeah, yeah, right.
You're
You
not
get
the
that
center
one.
of the universe. I got told that at a very young age from my father. Like, you are not the center of the universe.
That was it. And I used to think that I can give you these famous, like, these quotes, and I've had people say these things to me that, like, and I tell my staff all the time. I always tell them, why do you care so much, right? I talk to them all the time. Why do you care so much? Like, you're not defined by this. Like, when I talk to my staff, stop. Why do you care so much? The biggest advice I always go back to it. I've had plenty of those around me because I've worked for, been around a lot of people. My mom was shut up. Like, this is, sometimes you need to shut up and let things work out. And I was like, yeah, that's unbelievable advice. At the time, you're like, that was rude, mom. But it was just, hey, shut your mouth, listen, and see what happens.
Two ears and one mouth.
That was it. It was just shut up. And it kind of, because, when we're all young, we always wanted to say, it was like, shut up and listen. Yeah. And that was probably the best advice I've ever had. Very simple, but it was the best. And now I just shut up sometimes. Yeah.
Did you ever get bad advice?
I think we all get bad advice.
We do, don't we?
Why we all get bad advice?
I think part of it is everybody's situation is different. Like, you're not the same as somebody else. So they're not trying to give you bad advice. It's just that advice doesn't work for your own personal situation.
No, I get it. I probably get more bad advice than I do get good advice. And it's just, what do I want to take from that advice? I think that's just for all of us. I think that I've had plenty of bad advice. Right? I've had plenty of bad advice on jobs. Like, I've been doing this for Naia for a long time, and I get asked the same question every time: when are you leaving and going to Division I? When are you leaving and going to Division I? I'm like, that doesn't matter. Yep. Like, oh, listen, this is what you could do with your life. And I'm like, well, I mean, would it be cool to see if I could do it at that level? Absolutely, right? That'd be great. But, like, at the end of the day, I'm like, is that bad advice for my current situation? And like, well, if you do this, no. Like, what about my now? What about where I'm at now? What about other people that's affecting around me? Not just my family, but, my friends, my neighbors, my coworkers. Like, does it affect them? And so you get that all the time with people. But I think a lot of people, when people give advice, it's how can it circle around to help them? Yeah. There's always something in there for somebody. Is how can it help them? And that's what you got to realize real quick. That, like, every time most of the time people give advice, it circles around to how can they help themselves. So I always try to find that's why my circle is very small.
And the benefit of my job is I see every level of college baseball now, and there's really not a lot of difference between what I just saw at the Super Regionals last weekend, what I saw in Enid, Oklahoma, what I saw in California, what I saw in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. It's really not a whole lot different. So any coaches out there that think the grass is greener, it's really not. Like, you probably have a really good situation where you're at, and every level of college baseball is good now.
I think that's it. I mean, there are so many frustrations that I have throughout the year with some of the things we do or that I do or we don't have. And you're like, man, if I could just do this. And then you start to realize, wow, they're dealing with a whole different load of problems. Yes. And depending on what your problems want to be, right? I work at a level and I work at an institution that, like, I don't got to worry about being fired.
Yes.
Every single year, right? There's some stability in there. I've got an admin that loves me, that they let me do my job. They trust that I was able to do my job. They trust that I'm able to put a plan on the field. And just, we're a Christian institution. And we aren't, like, by name only, we are a Christian institution. And it is a big thing for us. And that's one of the reasons I work here. I mean, it is a certain type of kid, certain type of human being where, like, I got to make sure that I stay in there, which I love. We got to make sure we do that. Where these other places, you're like, big greener over here, but, like, hey, I can't talk about my faith if I'm there. Yeah. Or if I lose here, I don't have a job, right? Or I might be gone way more if I'm here. So I always think that we get caught up in the fact that it's, hey, do I always have enough? I mean, no matter where you go, you're never going to have enough. They can be in a Power 5, right? And now it's turning into a facility war.
Yes.
So I got to keep up with Arkansas. I got to keep up with, Alabama. I got to keep up facility-wise, where I wish we would grow on those facilities, but, like, then I'm going to be everything else, right? Yep. So I think that there's problems no matter where we go. It's just find out what's the good. What goods do you have? Like I told you, I work at a great place, beautiful campus, and I'm located unbelievably well.
Anything you'd like to see out of NAIA going forward? I mean, the regional format changing probably helped, right? I mean, did that help for you guys with the regional format?
Well, we
Or
went back this year.
yeah,
So we went back. I think that we need to figure out a way to. Our World Series can be a little bit different, I think, at times. I think that there's some changes I think that need to happen there. That's a grind out there,
it's
but
a lot of games, right?
it's a lot.
It's a lot of games.
Bracket's crazy and it's jumping all over the
Yeah.
place.
There in Grand Junction, it seems like Lewiston and Grand Junction are the two brackets that when you look at it, it's like, oh wow,
Well,
there's
I
a
can
lot
understand
going on.
Listen, I can understand Grand Junction.
Yeah.
I know what's going on in Grand Junction. I have no idea what's going on in our bracket. And I say it all the time. Like there's games where after you win, I don't know who I'm playing the next day. And the committee walks over and says, "Hey, what are you wearing tomorrow? You're the home team." I'm like, "Who am I playing?" Right. And so I've been there, enough times to really kind of figure it out. But if you're new, it's just kind of, it's all over. The travel up there is a lot, but I wouldn't say, I think that that's ever growing. And I think the people in the front office over at the NAI do a good job. I think that they identify those problems and they do a good job working through those problems. And I think that could be enemy. I can complain about D2, right? I complain all I want. You could be in D2 and they just finally changed it a little bit, but like you ain't seeing Tampa get flown out to Indiana to go get a little different. They're still going to have to grind it out against St. Leo and these other guys. So there's the negatives, the positives. Where in the NEI, our regional setup, you can go anywhere in the country and they're going to try to make sure that you've earned your right into brackets. So complain all we want about our World Series. At least we're doing it right in our opening rounds, our regionals.
What are some final thoughts or something I should have asked you that I didn't?
Oh, God, I have no idea. I don't know, man. Final thoughts, man. I just appreciate you, doing what you're doing. Obviously, I think that the platform that you have, able to reach out to a lot of people and give people like me an opportunities to, just talk about our program and who we are and in our faith and things that you're doing. It would be, I just said thanks for guys like you, man. I really do think that it's invaluable. I listen to a lot of these when I'm mowing the yard. I listen. There's stuff I pick up, and I mean that's kind of changed just my path as a coach, just by these things with guys like you that have allowed that to happen.
Appreciate it, Adrian. Thank you so much, man. This is awesome. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you, dude.